In this video, we're going to be doing task 1, setting up the booking system. So we've got quite a list of things to do there. And what I do when I get tasks like this is I basically just copy everything and I'm going to put it inside my code and I'm going to make a bullet point list of what needs to be done. So I'm just going to do that. I'm going to use Python idle for this project. So I've pasted the text in from task 1, just copied it in and I've pasted it into the program, and I'm just going to make bullet points out of it. Obviously this is going to be a commenting code. So the first thing is we're going to set up suitable data structures to store the license numbers and the names of the visitors, and then of who have booked the spaces. So I'm just going to remove that bit. The second thing is, obviously it says the data structures should have sufficient capacity to store the 20 parking spaces. We don't need to do anything for that. I'm looking for things to do rather than the explanation. Then we're going to allow a visitor to request a parking space on any day within the 2-week period, and that will be by entering a number between 1 and 14 inclusive. The system will check, so we've got another thing that we're going to do here, the third one. The system will check that there are spaces available on the day requested, and if so, ask the visitor to enter their name and a license number, and then this data will be stored in the data structures representing the first available parking space for the day requested. The visitor will be told the parking number space, and so that's our fourth thing. They'll be told the number of their parking space, and then the last thing that we're going to do, the fifth thing we're going to do, is at the end of the 2-week period, allow all of the data to be deleted, ready for the next 2-week period, and you can just see that there. So by going through that explanation, we've actually taken a big block of text that looks quite complicated and a little bit overwhelming, and we've just broken it down. This is called top-down refinement, or stepwise refinement, some people call it. It's a really good way to program. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to set up our suitable data structures to store the car license numbers and names of visitors. And we're going to create our array of 280 elements. So I'm going to call it parking spaces. And I'm going to create the array, and I'm going to create it all with blanks, and it's all going to be a 0 in there. And if I just do times 280, that will create an array of 280 elements, all set to 0. So if we print that out and then we run it, so we just print parking spaces, all of it out, then we'll see what it looks like. So I'm going to run this, and you'll see, there we go, there's our array. And this is why, yeah, it's 14 days of 20 parking spaces, all set to 0, and then we can allocate them and split out each of these into separate days. Now we also, because we need to store the person's name as well as the license number, what we're going to do is have a separate array for that. So I'm going to call it, I'm just going to call it names, and it's going to be exactly the same. I might just set that to blank actually. Yeah, I think I'll set that to blank. We could set it to 0 as well, or something else, but I'm just going to set it to be 280, and again, and just blank this time. And so I'm going to print out names, and you'll see that it will have, if I run this, 2 separate arrays. There we go. Oh, can't quite see it. There we go. So there's the first array. That's our parking spaces, where we're going to allocate the parking spaces, and then one underneath where we're going to store their name. Don't worry too much at the moment. If you don't quite understand it yet, we will get there and all will be revealed. Okay, so we've done the first thing. We have set up suitable data structures to store the car license numbers and names of visitors. The second thing that we're going to do next is allow a visitor to request a parking space on any day within the 2-week period by entering a number between 1 and 14 inclusive. Now when we're doing this, we need to make sure that we need to do a validation check to make sure that that number is between 1 and 14. The first thing that we're going to do is we are going to create a variable to store that. So I'm going to call it day, and I'm going to, or no, I'm going to call it requested day actually, requested day, and I'm going to set that to be a 0, and then I'm going to do a while loop, and this is going to be my validation check. So I'm going to say while requested day is less than 1 and requested day is greater than 14, then we're going to keep asking them to enter it. So we're going to say requested day equals int input which day do you want to book your parking space? 1 to 14. Okay, and that will basically force the user to enter a number between 1 and 14. So let's just check that. I just realised I've put requested, not requested day. So I'm just going to amend that. Yeah, that's good. Also, I have stupidly used an and there. So we're just going to change that. That should be an or, not an and. So just make sure that that on the while is an or. And then let's run it again. So I'm going to run that, run module. Which day do you want your parking space? So if I enter 17, it will ask again. So if I enter a number that's bigger than 14, or if I enter a number that's smaller than 1, or if I put 0, it will force me to enter. So if I put, for example, 4, then that has quit out and that's worked. So you can't quite see that. Let me just show you. My screen is a little bit too short. There we go. And so my validation check is working, because if I enter something outside of the range 1 to 14, it keeps asking me to enter it. And if I enter something that's in that range, it accepts it. And obviously it's quit now because we've run out of code. So that validation check, do kind of remember this validation check for number 2, because it's prime example of the sorts of things that they might ask you in the exam. They loved asking about validation checks in the exam. Okay, so we've done step number 1, we've done step number 2, actually I'll just put here done for that one, and we've done step 2. The third step that we're on now, we're going to get the system to check that there are spaces available on the day requested, and if so, it will ask the visitor to enter their name and car license number. So we need to check our array to see on the day that they entered it, or the day that they've entered, that there is a space in that 20 spaces. So remember, every day, if we've entered the number 4, we want a car park space on day 4, then what we do is we check that, and basically if there is a space, we then ask for their name, and it's just how we check that's going to be the important thing. Now, when we check arrays, we will need to use a for loop. For loops and arrays go hand in hand, so we're definitely going to need that. So the way that we do it is like this. We need a variable that is going to store where we start looking in our array. So if you remember with a for loop, the way that a for loop works is it will run a certain number of times. The whole point of a for loop is it will run a set number of times. And we could get it to search the whole array. And remember, our array is 280 elements. But if, for example, we only want a space on day 4, we can skip days 1, 2 and 3 and go straight to number 4. So if I just open up my diagram here, for example, if we request a day 2 space, for example, we can completely ignore all the elements in the array between 1 and 19. We're only going to search elements 20 to 29. So the day that they select, we can use that, and we actually need to create a variable called start position, and this is going to be where we start looking through our array, and I'm going to set it to be 0 to start with because that's fine. But then we need an end position as well. So I'm going to call it actually not start pos, start position, end position. I'm going to set them both to 0. And then what we're going to do is use that in our for loop. But before that, we're going to look at what part of the array we're going to search. Actually, our start position here is going to be, it's going to be the day that they've chosen. Sorry, requested day that they've chosen. So it's requested day. Now I have to do -1, and the reason for that is because we've got 0 indexed array. So we're going to -1, and remember that if I go back to this here, with our index, it starts with a 0 here, and therefore, if we are shifting everything, we need to make sure that it's -1. Then what we're going to do is we need to times that, or sorry, add 20. So it's not add 20, it's times 20. So if, for example, they request day 4, we take 1 away. So it would be, in this example, and this is just an example, don't type this bit in, but it would be, if it was day 4, it would be 4 -1, which is 3, times 20, like that. And that would get us to element number 60. So if I just put that there, that would get us to element 60. And for element 60, it's the 4th lot, basically. So, so that will be our start position. I'll just put that as an example. So we got to element 60 before we're looking for position to save. Now for the end position, we need to work that out too. End position is just our start position plus 20, and that's where we're going to end, because remember, we've got 280 spaces, they're allocated by days, and we just move 20 spaces, and that will get us our final space. So this is what we're going to do then. In our for loop, we do for index in range, and we use start position and then end position, and then that is how we search through for a space. And all we do is we say if parking spaces, and then index, if it equals, so it's not equal to 0, because 0 here is our default, it's empty, it's not been used, then success, we found what we needed to. So we can say here, found a parking space. And, we could print that out for now, and in a minute we're going to allocate it. So I'm just going to say print, I'm going to print index, parking position, parking space, that might be a better one. There we go. And then the index. So it should pick the first one. So if I pick day 1, it should pick space 0, for example. So let's have a look and see. And I just realised here in my if statement, I use not equal to, and it should be double equals. So just make sure on that line you change the if statement there to be double equals 0, and it will print out when it's found a free parking space. So if I print this, it doesn't matter, or if I run this, it doesn't matter which one I do. If I save that, I pick a parking space, and I'll pick day 1, for example, and we can see here it's printing out all the parking spaces for day 1 if it's free, and it is, they're all free because we haven't booked any. So if we have a look at another one, and let me just readjust my screen so that you can see it all. So let's run that again, and if I pick, for example, day well, I don't know, day 7. I'll pick day 7, and that's the different parking spaces in our array, and it's going to check between 120 and 139. So that is so far so good. We found a parking space, but as soon as we find a parking space, we need to quit out of this for loop. We don't need to keep going around if we found the space. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just put a break there, and that will quit out of the for loop. Okay, so far so good. We have got, if we've got, it will check that there is a space available on the day requested, and if so, then we ask the visitor to enter their name and car license number. So this is the point where we need to sort of say, yes, we found something. So actually what I'm going to do is I'm going to use, just outside here, I'm going to use a Boolean variable, because this is a really good way of deciding whether or not to do something else later on. So I'm going to create a variable called space found, and I'm going to set it to false to start with. And then here, before we break, if we've got a parking space available, we're going to set space found equal to true. And then we can use space found later on to say if we found it, then we can ask their, their details. And that's the next thing that we're going to do, is we're going to ask them, the visitor, to enter their name and car license number. So here I'm going to say if space found is equal to true, then I'm going to ask them for their name. So I'm going to say name equals input, enter your name, and then I'm going to put their license number, and I'm going to ask for that as well. That will actually be a string as well. Enter your car license, license plate, like that. And then we're going to store those in the array where we found that position. So actually there is something else that we need to do, and that is where we found the parking space, we need to store the element number where it was found. So I'm going to create another variable here called space index, and I'm going to set it to be -1. Okay. And we're going to use space index here. When we've got the space that we found it, we're going to say space index equals index. So basically, if, for example, we had that example where they wanted a space on day 7, and it picked out, where was it? If I show you here, well, it had lots of different spaces. If I run this, I'll show you again. Actually, it will be a bit more obvious. So I'm going to pick day 7 again. So I'm going to say I want a space on day 7, and oh, I've got an error. Got a capital I there. It needs to be lowercase I. So I've just fixed that. Let's run that again. You're never too experienced to get basic errors. Day 7. So I'm going to book day 7, and it's found me a space, and it's element number 120. So somewhere in this array here is element 120, and that's going to be our parking space. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to store that in this variable here called space index, and we're going to use that so that wherever they've picked out or we've found a parking space, that's where we store their name in the name array, because remember, we have to store their name. So we get their name, and then I'm going to say parking spaces here, space index equals license number, and then names, space index equals name. So that's going to store their name and their license plate in the correct position in the array where we found their space. So let's have a look at this, because actually what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to print out those arrays as well, and you'll see what I mean once we have just done this once. And obviously we're only going to do this once, but we will put it inside a loop so that they can pick more than one. But for now we'll just leave this. So the first thing is, yeah, I'm going to pick, I'll pick day 1 to start with, and I'll do a couple of tests. So I'll pick day 1. It's found the first space, which is obviously 0, because index 0, it's found with day 1, the first space it's found is here. And then, so we're going to enter the name. So I'll put Julia, your license plate number, like that. And you can see here, oh, I've got it in the wrong way round. Yeah, no, that's the right way around actually. So it's found a space on day 1. My name's Julia, and that's my license plate, and it's stored it. So let's run this again. So if I run it again, and for example, I'm going to pick day 7, and it's found me a space in 120. So I'm going to put someone else's name in, Bob, and Bob's license plate number is that. And you can see there that it's added, because it's day 7, it's further into the array. It's 7 times 20 into the array. So that's good. It's halfway actually for Bob, and Bob's name is there matching the same index, because this is the names and this is the license and the actual parking spaces. Okay, so that's good. We've done part 3. We can say that that's done. And actually we've done we've done all that, and we've done this one here, and that's done as well. It says the visitor will be told the number of their parking space. Now this, where we do have to adjust this slightly, we need to divide by 20, because obviously the parking space is not quite the same, because obviously we're using one array. What we need to do is divide by 20, because we've originally times by 20 when we were allocating it. So let's do that. So the next bit of task 1 is the visitor will be told the number of their parking space. So we'll print that out, just a simple print statement. And I'm just going to leave these in. This is debug, just so we can see what's going on. But we'll say print, you have been allocated space number, and we'll put that in, and it will be parking, it'll be space index divided by 20, and then that will be the space, and we also actually have to add 1 as well, because we're basically doing the opposite of what we did when we set our start position. So we add 1, and that should be the right one. So let's have a look, and it should always be space 0 to start with, because we're always just finding the first space. So which day did you want? I think my maths is right, but we'll see. Parking space 0, I mean obviously that's my debug. Enter my name, and you've been allocated space number 1. Well, it's allocated space number 1.0, so actually what we can do is we can int that. We put an int around that calculation, and that will, with some extra brackets, that will get rid of the 0.0. So I'm just going to run that again. Space number 1. You have been allocated space number 1. Good. And actually what I might do is just put the day as well. So I'll just put a little bit of extra on day, and then day. Okay, so I'm very happy with that. Let's see what else we have to do. We've done number 4. At the end of the 2-week period, allow all of the data to be deleted, ready for the next 2-week period. So the last thing that we need to do is basically we just do this here, where we allocate everything again. So this code here will reset all the data and reset it. There we go. And I'm just going to do a little prompt there. I'm just going to say print data has been parking data has been reset. Now we're going to put this in a menu item later on, but for now we'll just leave it. Okay, there we go. And that's it. So task 1 has been done. But yeah, I think what I might do is just before we finish, so that's done. Oh, it needs to be done on the line above here. There we go. Okay, so we've done everything for task 1, except I'm going to put a menu system in because we need to, we don't want it to reset completely. Or, I mean, we could just put a prompt in to say, did you want to quit? But I think we'll put a menu system in. It will be nicer. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to create a menu. I'm going to say print car parking menu. And we're going to say B for book, a space, Q to quit. We'll do quit last. We'll do R to reset the data, and that's going to be the last one. And then Q to quit, like this. And I'm just going to put that there, but above it, I'm going to have a variable called run, and I'm going to set that equal to true. And then I'm going to say while run is not equal, or while run equals true, then we're basically going to keep running all of the code. So I've got my while loop here for my main menu, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to select every bit of code I've got here and tab it in so that it's indented once, but only under that while loop. So just make sure you've got that correct. All of the code underneath the while loop here and is indented once, so I selected it all and I pressed the tab key, and the tab key is next to the Q, letter Q on your keyboard. So then we're going to say if we need to get the user to enter what they want. So user choice equals input, and just a prompt like that. And then we'll say if user choice is double equals B, then we're going to do this here, all the requested day up to here. So select everything up to before the reset data, press the tab key again. Remember, the tab key is the key to the left of the Q key. So I just press it in once, and it's now underneath this if statement. So it's all indented underneath this if statement here. And then we have another if here. We say elif user choice is double equals to reset the data, and we just select all that underneath and tab it so that it's indented once. So now when we run this, if I click B, which day do you want? Day 4, enter your name. Oh, and I've got an error. Oh, day is not defined. So let me just check that. It is requested day, not day. Sorry about that. So here it should be requested day and not day. I should have run it and I didn't do. Right, okay, so the final one, let's book. Oh, that's not right. B for book. Day 3. Yeah, and that has done it. There we go, up here. and you'll see it here as well. Okay, good, so it's looped around again. So if I want to reset the data, I'm just going to click R to reset the data, and parking data has been reset. There we go, good. We haven't done a quit. Let's do that as well. So we do another elif. The elif has to be indented once. So if your prompt is there, press the tab key. We do elif, user choice, double equals Q for quit. And then we just do run equals false. And then that will quit out. Okay, so I'm just going to double check that and check that everything is okay with the quit. So it's just going to quit out straight away, and that worked. You can put a little message there actually. It's quite nice to do that. You could say, I don't know, print, thank you for using the car park app. There we go. Goodbye. And then that's it. So that is task 1. I'm just going to very slowly go through the code in case you've got any errors. And if you do get stuck with errors, just double check that you've got your code exactly like mine. It must be exactly the same, otherwise you will get errors. And I'm just going to just scroll down, oh, not quite that quickly, so that you can see all the code and amend yours if you need to. And you can obviously pause the video when you want. And I'll just move that so you can see it. And there we go, the last bit of the code. And that is task 1. Okay, so there's quite a lot of stuff there. For task 2, we are going to be amending this because we're going to have special car parking spaces.